start now. Shall I reintroduce everything, Clive, do you think, given that people weren't watching this morning?
Yeah, it would make sense.
Yeah. Okay. Right. I'll do a fresh intro. Okay then. So good morning, everyone. It's now 11:30, and it's time for us to resume the hearings into the examination of the Exeter local plan. For anyone new today, my name is Katie McDonald. I am a chartered town planner and planning inspector. I'm also working with my colleague Clive Coyne, who is also a chartered town planner and planning inspector. We've been appointed by the Secretary of State to hold this examination and produce a report about conclusions and recommendations as to revise the soundness and legal compliance of the plan. Today we're discussing matters 12 and 13, which is culture and tourism, design, health and wellbeing, and that includes policies C1, C2, D1, D2, D3, HW1, HW2. Robert Young's on the call. He's the programme officer for the examination. He works independently for Inspector Coyne and I, and is responsible for the administrative arrangements. The session is being recorded, so it will be put on the council's website this afternoon for anybody that's been unable to access it this morning. Anyone from the press, I presume the press is now on this call, which is good. So I will continue on. For those who have not attended a local plan examination before, our role is to assess whether or not the local plan is legally compliant and to determine whether or not it is sound. And in order for it to be sound, the framework states that the plan needs to be positively prepared, justified, effective, effective and consistent with the national policy. The hearing sessions allow an opportunity for those with the right to be heard to exercise it. There is no agenda for today. Instead, we will run through the matters, issues and questions that we've already issued and ask any other questions that we might have, and also listen to anybody that wants to participate. It's not an opportunity to add new or additional points. It is to expand on your hearings, on your representation that you've already made to the Reg 19 stage. We will not break for mid-morning break as we've had many interruptions, but we will break for lunch around 1 o'clock and come back at 2 if we've not already finished by then. Any question on the format of the sessions? No. Okay. Then can I get everyone to introduce themselves again, please? So start with the council and then similar to what we did before, try and do it in alphabetical order for anybody that else is remaining. So I'll go to the council first. Thank you.
Thank you, Mum. Good morning all. My name's George Marshall. I'm the Assistant Service Lead for the local plan at the City Council.
Jenny Barnett, Local Plans Team, Exeter City Council.
Good morning, Craig Davies from Exeter City Council's Local Plans Team.
Morning, Roger Clotworthy, Head of City Development at Exeter City Council.
Good morning, Jill Day, Exeter City Council, Local Plans Team. Thank you.
Good morning, Catherine Smith, Exeter City Council, Local Plans Team.
I'm Tim Leader, a barrister instructed by the council.
Morning, Chris Martin from Home Builders Federation.
Good morning, Lena Marianta Collier, solicitor for the Healthcare NHS Foundation Trust.
Good morning, Dave Tarbert. I'm a director at the hospital of the RDUH Foundation Trust.
I'm Alexandra. I'm a solicitor for the Royal Devon University Healthcare Trust.
Hi, Malcolm Dickin, part of the NHS Local Planning Authority engagement team supporting the RDUH and here to support any questions around primary care.
Thank you. I think that is everyone that's actively participating today. Anybody else? No. Okay, great. So I will I'll crack on then. So issue 2 unless it's policy C1 and C2. There wasn't anybody registered to attend these sessions that wasn't apart from the City Council. So this shouldn't take us long, hopefully, as the council answered a number of questions already. So could the council just run through question 1, which is what is the difference between development that would have unacceptable impacts on local amenity and development that would not significantly harm local amenity? I know that there's a main mod suggested here, so I'll go over to the council, please. Thank you.
Yeah, that one's me. As I said, I think the council would really like to suggest a main modification to clarify this and to make it consistent with the rest of the plan to read will be supported where they will not have unacceptable impacts on local amenity. Hopefully that would take away any further discussion for the difference between the two, really.
Yeah, it's helpful and it does set out it makes it more consistent in that respect. Obviously policy HW2 talks about there being no unacceptable impacts on amenity. Is this element of the policy necessary, or is it just purely sort of boxing off? They do different things.
Mum, would you mind repeating that question?
Yeah,
Apologies.
so policy HW2 talks about there being no unacceptable impacts on amenity. So it's sort of asking for the same thing. And obviously the plan would be read as a whole. Is it necessary to have these bits in policy C1 about there being no unacceptable impacts on amenity if they're already covered elsewhere?
I think we were just looking to include a comprehensive consideration within the policy within C1. Yes, it would be considered elsewhere in the plan, but in terms of ease of reference, we've included it in C1 as well.
Thank you. That's helpful. Okay, and Devon Wildlife Trust asked for biodiversity to be included in this policy as well, as in there's no unacceptable impacts on biodiversity. What were your thoughts on that in terms of their representation?
So our feeling relating to this was that there are significant policies elsewhere within the plan which consider biodiversity, and I guess if we were to include reference to biodiversity here where there isn't such an obvious link to elsewhere, we could run the risk of then having to include various other considerations, and then I think the policy could become unwieldy at that stage. So that is an example of a point which is dealt with elsewhere in the plan within the natural environment chapter.
Thank you. The next question related to large scale development. Obviously, we've talked about this change in the glossary already, that you're going to include like a separate entry for what those are. Was there anything else you wanted to say about this question? Because obviously we've already covered that sort of large scale development definition.
No, I don't think there was anything to add to this one. Like I say, it's come up in other areas of the plan as well.
Thank you. That's fine with me. And then in terms of question 3, what is a cultural plan and the justification for requiring one to be submitted with large scale development, and how that policy is effective? Obviously, you've set out quite a comprehensive response there in your MIQs. Was there anything else that you wanted to add, just or to expand on in that in response to that question?
No, I don't think there's anything else to add. So we tried to put as much as we could in the hearing statement. And there was that's where the proposed modification was as well. So
yeah. So you've got the additional modification, which is SA N90. That would be a main mod based on sort of how it directs you to consider the policy. So definitely a main mod for that one. Just for me, where's the update on, because I know that you've talked about that there's a draft culture plan being produced by the council. Is there an update on where that's at the moment?
It has gone out to consultation this week. So it's out to consultation at the moment until the end of June.
Thank you. The next question was about whether or not it would be clear to all users of the plan what was meant by sensitive and sympathetic to local identity and cultural practices. You've obviously set out, obviously it's case by case basis and dependent upon factors such as location, design, and uses proposed. Could you try and give me an example of how you think the policy would work in practice, just so that I can understand how development would achieve those aims? It would just help me in terms of how you're going to actually apply this policy.
Yeah, so it would, the process of engaging local people is something that's being encouraged for all large scale development anyway. So you'd engage local people within the development of of the proposal overall, and part of that would be looking at local identity and local cultural practices. And what we're talking about when we're talking about delivering the culture could be anything from public spaces, from placemaking, to sort of flexible uses of open public space as well, that as it was available to do so, could come into design, public art delivery, or kind of your animated engaging public realm. But what would be appropriate would depend on what is actually what the proposal is, what the site's like, and kind of be a workup and the extent of what could be delivered or what would be required or presented in the cultural plan. Equally, as I said previous, would be kind of proportionate with the development in question, really. So it is quite a flexible proposal, and what could come forward could be any number of things. I think the key one really that was often discussed is having, like I say, is public spaces that can be used flexibly and adapted as needs and requirements evolve, and just having those spaces within developments that have that option.
Okay, so I'm just thinking, I'm a developer and I've got this policy that I need to tick. Is that purely just going to come from pre-app at that point where you get engaged and you're then told what the developer needs to do to facilitate this? And is that where it's going to come out? It's just obviously you're reading a plan, you're trying to tick all the boxes as a developer, and it's not clear exactly what you'll be required to do.
Yeah, it would come through pre-app and discussion of building up the proposal.
And could it be combined with other things like public office space, things like that, other things that would be required through a large scale development?
Yeah, absolutely. It's not necessarily a standalone. Like I say, it could come into the design and reflecting even the use of local materials, things like that could come forward through and in delivering a proposal that reflects this kind of local cultural identity.
Okay, that's really helpful. Thank you. The Exeter Cathedral put in a rep about their disappointment that they hadn't been featured very heavily in the plan in terms of the cultural assets. Is there any thoughts about or any response to that as to why the cathedral hasn't been mentioned specifically?
It's mentioned in the supporting text. Cathedral's mentioned under cultural facilities in paragraph 12.15 in the supporting text within culture, which we considered enough to have the inclusion of it as an important feature and cultural feature within the city.
Thank you. And then the fifth question was about whether or not it was the policies were basically sound. I've seen the responses to that. I have no further questions in regards to that. And then the last question talks about any modifications. We've talked about SAMM 90, which needs to be a main mod, and then the additional mod you suggested in the hearing statements, which is not the hearing statements. In your response to the MIQs, which is at the change to the policy just to obviously remove significant harm and tie it all up. Is there anything else, any other mods that we need to go through?
No, I think that was it. It was the large scale one that's been covered off elsewhere. So
super. Right, that's it for culture then. Anything else anybody wants to add on cultural policies?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So then moving on to design, health and wellbeing. Issue 1, design and advertisements, which is policies D1, D2 and D3. We asked a question about whether it was sufficiently clear what is meant by appropriate densities, massing and building heights, and reinstate former street patterns. Could the council just run through your response, please, and then I will go out to any reps, please. Thank you.
So yes, with question 1, we're talking about appropriate densities, massing, building heights. The council feels it's explained within supporting text, paragraphs 13.5 to 13.11, and refers to various evidence and guidance and explanation to help ensure this is clear. The densities are recommended by the density study, which is EVBH08, pages 19 to 22, and key views identified within the Skyline study of EVBHH02, which have informed the capacities in the HELAR. So together they were kind of felt to support the development of proposals that would be appropriate density, massing and height for the setting. With the former street patterns, I
think in terms of the former street patterns, we were keen to ensure that development proposals took the opportunity to look at what the previous grain was where appropriate and reflect those within the layout and built form of applications where appropriate. It won't necessarily be a requirement across the board, but it will help to ensure that those proposals do link and reflect the character of the local area, and reflect, as we've already spoken, the identity and heritage within particularly the historic core of the city. So it may not be something that's a requirement across the board, but there will be opportunities where that can be implemented, and that would to a large extent reflect the potential to almost put back some of what was lost in the post-war redevelopment of the city, particularly through the provision of what's known as Western Way, which is the inner bypass. So it's in relation to reflecting identity and heritage and grounding that development in that heritage asset of the past.
Thank you, that's helpful. Could I ask anyone that is speaking just to put your camera on? It's really disconcerting when I can just see myself and there's no one else with a camera on when you're talking. Please, if that's all right. Okay. Anyone I know HBF had reps on this. Do you want to come in, Mr. Martin, with anything?
Ma'am, just picking up firstly, I guess, on the street patterns. It's useful what Mr. Marshall just said, because I think that tallies with what I was going to raise, which is I think reinstating the street patterns, particularly that heritage angle, there is, I can see the merit in that in particular, but it's going to be difficult to implement that in every instance, because we now live in a different world where you've got to look at road widths, junction radii, visibility displays, that sort of thing, adapt streets for active travel, LTM 120, etc. Natural traffic calming, that sort of thing. So my point on that one would be whether that qualifier, where possible or where, it needs to be added to that criterion in particular, just to clarify that that's the case. And I think that's what Mr. Marshall was on about, because he was saying you can't really apply it in all cases. It will be for where it's relevant. In relation to densities, I've noted that the policy in the text, the supporting text within the policy, doesn't specifically mention specific densities, which is something that we would support, because we think that's quite pragmatic, because although there's the thrust from the MPPF which talks about optimizing site densities, that really should be, in our view, looked at on a site-by-site basis based on that specific opportunities and constraints that a site may have. Our concern really is then to do with this density study and how that interacts with the policy. Worries with the density study is that it, whilst it's a comprehensive bit of work that's been done, it, by its very design, it's retrospective, and it looks at what's been achieved previously. We're now living in an environment where we are looking at on-site BNG, enhanced sort of SUDs, active travel requirements, parking standards, M42, M43, NDSS, all these other requirements in, and it's whether a new development coming in now can achieve those densities that are in the density study report. I know that at the end it talks about an average of 50 dwellings per hectare minimum in those areas, sort of outside of the areas which they've identified for even higher densities, and it was whether that sort of average densities is realistic given the current policy regulatory requirements. And the interaction between that report and the policy, which seems largely silent on specific densities.
Thank you. Is it Mr. Marshall or Ms. Barnett? Who wants to respond to Mr. Martin?
Thanks, Mum. I may ask Mrs. Smith to respond to this point, because I think it was covered in terms of densities, at least it was covered at one of the previous sessions when we were discussing housing. So I will pass over to Mrs. Smith, if I may.
Thank you, Mum. Yeah, just to say, I guess we've got a separate density policy in the plan, policy H15, and we have, I believe, kind of covered this area before, and our response was that we didn't feel it was necessary to insert density standards into the policy. High densities are already being achieved in the city centre and town centres or district centres of the city already. So yeah, they're already happening without the density standards being in there. We feel that reference to the Exeter density study is all that's needed in the supporting text.
Thank you. Any comments in relation to historic street patterns and the suggestion that it could be as necessary or as required, rather than it appearing to be almost a requirement for every development, as it reads at the minute?
Just one comment, Ma'am, would be that the policy is written in such a way that it's deliberately phrased. So rather than these being set out as specific sort of absolute requirements in every case. It references that development proposals will be supported where they, and then lists out the various criteria. I think on that basis, I think it's implied that it won't necessarily be that each of these will have to be applied routinely in every case. However, if it were to be helpful, I don't think we would be adverse to putting in a qualifying statement at the end of point F. I guess the question comes then, what about all the other criteria which are listed there? So we've deliberately drafted it so that it was more positively worded, and that's the structure of the policy.
Any thoughts from you, Inspector Coyne?
Yeah, I think I probably agree with Mr. Marshall in terms of what I'm thinking, that it is implicit in there that they're not absolute requirements. So yeah, I think it's probably okay as it is.
Okay, thank you. I think the clarification of the council is helpful, that it is generally more the historic core of the city in terms of where they're looking to reinstate the street patterns. And again, it's one of those balancing exercises where you'll have highways saying one thing and the historic department saying the other. So and it comes down to the planners. Okay, that's all good with me in terms of that question. The next question is about whether it's sufficiently clear to users of the plan what a comprehensive response to existing site constraints, utilities, infrastructure and provision would entail. Do you want to just give your response on that, Mr. Marshall, or whoever from the council, before I go to any representatives?
So, Mum, if I just provide a little bit of, I suppose, explanation, there isn't probably too much more than what's in the hearing statement, but the text relating to the comprehensive approach is to consider or ensure that we avoid more of a piecemeal ad hoc approach, and that could be either in terms of individual applications across a larger area, but also in terms of the different utilities and how they work together across an application. It also would link to the requirements for infrastructure phasing plans, which we talked about in relation to larger residential developments, as per policy IF1. There was also some discussions directly on this point with the National Grid as a result of their rep, and this was referenced in their statement of common ground, I believe.
Yeah, there are some reps from National Grid, so I think that's been dealt with, isn't it, by statement of common ground.
It has been dealt with and addressed through the statement of common ground, yes.
Thank you. Thanks for the confirmation. Anything from you, Mr. Martin, on this policy?
Not really. I don't think I've got much to add. I personally thought it was fairly self-explanatory as to what it is. I mean, most developers will know that, you know, you base your proposal on the opportunities and constraints that are right there on the site, and that will include, you know, utilities and infrastructure provisions. So I think it's fairly self-explanatory. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question relates to high quality public realm and landscape design, and whether it's applies to all developments. Council said it's proportionate. It's the scale and type of development, and obviously we've just talked about policy D1, not every criteria, not applying to everything. So I have nothing further to add on that. Anything else anybody wants to add? Thank you. Then the fourth question relates to the reference to supplementary plan documents and guidance, as has happened, I think, numerous times now on other main mods. Take out the reference to taking it into account and have regard to it instead as a main mod. Anything else anybody wants to add to that?
Main Mom, I agree with the with what the council's put in the hearing statement in terms of with regard to that. That's more appropriate. I don't know if it, as I'm filling in for my colleague here, I don't know whether it's been discussed more generally about the fact that it will be the ability to update the supplementary planning documents given what's happening in June, with them sort of no longer being able to be produced, and whether that's been discussed at all and whether the council have given any thought as to what they might be doing in the future with regards to that.
It has been discussed in previous sessions, yeah. Mr. Evans definitely pointed it out to us more than once. Anything the council wants to add in relation to that?
I don't think so, Mum. We've discussed it a number of times, and the additional text that we've suggested in the hearing statement is there to make sure that the reference is consistent with how we've addressed this issue for the other policies across the plan.
Super. Thank you. Okay. Nothing else to add then. The fifth question refers to the policies being sound. There was a comment on that from the Exeter Conservatives about community balance. Have we already boxed that off with the main mod in the housing chapters?
I believe we have, Mum, yes.
Yeah, good. That's what I was recalling too, but I just wanted to make sure that was the case with the council as well. Okay, thank you. Anything else on question 5?
I don't think there's anything else on the part of the council, Mum. I don't know if anyone else had anything.
No, don't think so. Okay, then can the council just run through all the mods just to make sure that we've covered them all, please, because I don't think we've discussed a couple of them. And before we move on to health, wellbeing, environment and pollution policies.
Yeah, so there were 2 main modifications. Okay. Sorry, bear with me.
It's okay, don't worry.
Yeah. So the first one being SMM 77, which was to amend the policy to read for criteria E, respect the historic environment and retain and refurbish existing buildings with according to their townscape and historic value instead of high, which came from Historic England.
Yeah, that's that makes sense, and would we recommend you, please?
Okay, thank you. SMM 78 was to add an additional criterion to read to promote high quality design and placemaking. Development proposals will be supported where they And then criterion N, use soils in a sustainable manner in accordance with the DEFRA guidance, which came from representation from Natural England.
Yeah, understood. That is recommended as well, please.
Mum, may I just jump in briefly there, if that's okay? I'm just thinking about the discussions that we've just had about the accordance with point relating to
having
SPDs.
regard to.
I just it hasn't struck us until this point, but I wonder if that would be a more appropriate form of words for that one.
Yeah, it would, please.
Yeah, I think it would. And then you could maybe add in something to reflect the latest DEFRA guidance to cover the points we've spoke about previously in terms of just making sure it's in line with what the next iteration or whatever comes out.
I know that Mr. Martin, you've got your hand up, but I note your rep about that it would be helpful to have it in the supporting text what that is, what that DEFRA guidance is. Is that what you wish to raise, or is there anything else?
It was, ma'am, but also it was, I think, great minds think alike, because it was the point I was going to raise. It was about it needing to say have regard to rather than in accordance
with. Yeah, thank you. Well picked up, Mr. Marshall and Mr. Martin. Can we have something in the supporting text about what that DEFRA guidance is? Because DEFRA have a lot of guidance, so it would be helpful to just signpost developers to exactly which guidance it's referring to.
Yes, thanks, Mum. That's something that we can add.
Thank you. So that's SMM 77 and SMM 78. Then there was obviously the further modification, which was have regard to rather than take into account the SPD. And then is there an additional modification as well?
There was one additional suggested, which was SAMM 91, to make reference to the consideration of the Exeter Skyline study.
Yeah, just to update that document reference.
The no wording of it yet.
Yeah, that's fine. That can stay as an additional mod.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else anybody wishes to add on the design policies?
I think we're all good in terms of the council. Thank you.
Anything from you, Inspector Coyne?
No. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So moving on then to the health, wellbeing, and environment and pollution policies, which is HW1 and HW2. The first question we asked about HW1 was whether it was justified, effective, and consistent with paragraph 96 of the framework, which requires planning policies to aim to achieve healthy, inclusive, and safe places. I've seen the council's response in relation to that. I have no further questions in response to that question. Is there anything anybody else wishes to add? No.
No, I think in our hearing statement we've pointed out the justification that exists in terms of other policy documents and guidance documents. The only other point maybe I wanted to make was just to highlight the range of other policies in the plan that will indirectly help support healthy and safe places. So HW2, which we'll discuss, policy D2, which is designing out crime, policy H16 on residential amenity, and policies STC 1 through 3, which relate to safe and active travel. So all of those will also contribute to in addition to policy HW1 to achieving healthy, inclusive and safe places.
Thank you, that's really helpful. Okay. Question 8 then was, would a separate health impact assessment be necessary for all site allocations? And if so, would this requirement be consistent with Public Health England guidance, which advises that health impact assessments are a useful tool to use where they are expected to have significant impacts? Do you, could the council just run through your response, please, to that question, and then I will ask any questions or go out to anybody that wants to speak.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, so the policy requires for large-scale residential development proposals the submission of a health impact assessment. Large-scale residential development proposals is defined in the glossary of the plan, which is developments which include 100 or more homes and or 200 or more student or co-living bed spaces. So in our view, that threshold is quite high. So developments that fall below that threshold, there wouldn't be a requirement for the submission of a health impact assessment. So we think that accords with the guidance, which says that the Public Health England guidance, which says that they're a useful tool where health impact assessments are, where there's expected to be significant health impacts. What we have suggested through the hearing statement is that we broaden that slightly so that the policy refers to large-scale residential development proposals, and then inserting text and other development proposals which are expected to result in significant health impacts, which just adds a bit of flexibility. So at I guess at validation stage, planning officers, if there was something to do with that particular site, that even though it's below the threshold, they might think that there's potential for significant adverse health impacts, maybe because of contaminated land or some other site-specific issue, or similarly, it would mean that commercial proposals, proposals for commercial development, one could also ask for a health impact assessment if there was a specific need. So just that little bit of flexibility, I think that is okay. So that's a new suggested modification directly in response to this question. So it's not in the submitted schedule.
Thank you. I have got a hand up from.
I just want to note that the access to health services is omitted on the assessment. It would be helpful if that would be added to the assessment.
So in the criteria A to E.
Yes, so it would access to health services. That might be sort of enhancing the situation that we are in with the secondary and both GP practices. And I think that's quite important that people have access to health service.
I don't
know. I'm
back to council. Is that something that a health impact assessment would normally cover in terms of what one would normally look like?
In my mind, it's certainly an important issue, and I know we will be discussing that further, the impact on existing health services. I mean, colleagues can weigh in as well. In my mind, a health impact assessment is dealing more to do with the proposal itself, looking at things like location and design and layout, access to light, the sort of softer elements of a proposal. My feeling is that the policy works quite well as it is in terms of setting out the range of criteria for health impact assessments to address, and then further down in the policy talking about where contributions might be sought, and we will be discussing suggested modifications in relation to that element about contributions. So yeah, my feeling is that keeping it as two sort of separate elements of the policy potentially works quite well.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't done a lot of health impact assessments. I remember doing it when I was in local government a long time ago, but it was more sort of soft-sided rather than looking at the actual the development itself rather than the impact the development had on any services, so to speak. I'm not sure. Any thoughts on that, Mr. Coyne?
Can I? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
I'm just thinking
ahead.
a bit further. Sorry to interrupt. It's also something that so this is something that an applicant is required to submit at validation stage. I mean, the applicant themselves isn't necessarily going to know about existing capacity of healthcare services. So it might be more appropriate for that to be something that NHS partners in their consultation responses set out information on in response to planning applications, rather than something that an applicant would be expected to provide at the outset, because they wouldn't necessarily know.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I've just had a quick look at what health impact assessments are in terms of what they're expected to be. I think because it is developed by the applicant, it's part of a scheme. I don't think it would be necessary to have it in the policy that it needs to consider those elements, because that would be coming from whichever stakeholder that is, that they need those things providing. Any thoughts from you, Mr. Coyne?
No, I think I would agree with what you just said. I don't necessarily think that's something that a health impact assessment needs to necessarily specify. That sort of thing would be looked at in the round, by other aspects of this policy and other policies when such a proposal comes forward, I think.
Yeah. I don't think it'd be necessary to include an extra criteria in this one, or even justified and consistent with national policy in terms of what's expected of producing health impact assessments.
No, I think it might be going above and beyond.
Yeah.
What they would do. Okay. Mr. Sorry.
Mr. Martin, you've got your hand up.
Mr. Martin's got his hand up first, and then we've got the person.
I think, well, I was going to raise this point later, but I'll raise it now. I think part of the issue with this is probably that there isn't a pointer to the methodology that should be used for undertaking a health impact assessment. I know some other plans sort of latch on to certain methodology, certain guidance notes that tell you how a health impact assessment should be set out. And I do think that's important, because I think otherwise you may well end up with HIAs being submitted for different schemes that read quite differently and look at things quite differently. So a standard sort of methodology could be quite helpful. The primary point I wanted to raise really was more about the trigger for it. I know it's mentioned about large scale developments, but that is making somewhat of a bold assumption that all large-scale developments would reach that significant threshold in which a HIA would be required according to the PPG. Surely you would need to find some evidence as to suggest as to that every single large-scale development could have that potential significant impact. Furthermore, I note that the sustainability statement itself assesses health outcomes as part of that process. So I think it's SA objective 4 within the sustainability appraisal. Therefore, if that's the case, is it not the case then that all schemes that conform with the development plan do already automatically take into account health impact outcomes, because it is assessed through the local plan, through the sustainability appraisal itself? Where I've looked at this and where this has come up in other local plan examinations that I've been involved in, they and often a useful way around this actually is to, at the application stage, require applicants to put all it's like a screening in, and that would determine at that point whether your scheme could have the potential significant impacts. And then it would mean then that you would get steered towards doing a health impact assessment. For the HBF, that's a bit more of a robust way of doing it than just sort of having a statement that all large scale development would reach that significant threshold. Thank you.
Thank you. I will come back to you. And sorry, I can only see your first name, and I don't want to call you by first name because
That's all right. Absolutely. And all I was going to say, I'm happy to leave it to the consultation.
Okay.
It was just that I wanted to clarify it for the public record that that's fine, absolutely fine, and probably the appropriate people to say that anyway. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Okay, so in regard to HBF's comments, you literally took the question right out of my sheet about whether it should be appropriate to request it for everything, and obviously if things have been allocated, then surely they've already been through a process of that consideration. And why would it be necessary then for HIA to come in with those things that were in accordance with the development plan? So just looking for the council to come back on that, really, in relation to what you're asking for in HW1 as to sorry, I've got two screens here, which is why I keep looking this way as well, as to why you've got those sort of almost validation requirements set within the policy, and also if it would be necessary for everything. So I'll go over to, well, whoever from the council wants to talk to this issue.
Yeah, thank you. So I think a key thing to highlight is that the policy asks for a proportionate health impact assessment. So in relation to Mr. Martin's point about HIA screening, I mean, I think the fact that the requirement for an HIA that the HIA itself needs to be proportionate, I think effectively deals with that. I mean, if an applicant feels that there's it's above the threshold, but there's unlikely to be major sort of impacts, then they can set that out in a fairly lightweight health impact assessment, and that would meet the policy requirement for it to be proportionate. In my mind, the threshold of 100 or more homes or 200 or more bed spaces is quite a high threshold. Potentially, actually, there'd be major developments quite far below that threshold where there could actually be significant health impacts, which is why I think it's right to introduce that additional flexibility that I've mentioned. In my mind, the threshold is effectively so high that 100 or more homes, there is definitely the potential for significant health impact assessment. Significant health impacts on all sites, on all submission proposals of that size. I think the HBF's point regarding Public Health England guidance or guidance on what needs to be included in the health impact assessment is one that we would agree with, and so it might be helpful. I think it would be helpful to include in the supporting text for policy HW1 reference to Public Health England guidance on health impact assessments. Then finally, the point regarding the sustainability appraisal of the plan. So again, I think there's around 9 allocations which are above this threshold of 100 or more homes. Like an SA assessment is naturally at a higher level. It can't take account of details of a particular proposal, and the plan itself is quite open in terms of what, for example, on a particular allocation, it doesn't say whether it has to be student housing, whether it has to be general needs housing. There's a range of proposals that could come forward on an allocated site, and the health impacts of that could be quite, grossly different from one proposal to the next. So I think it would be too much to ask a sustainability appraisal assessment to deal with the range of potential forms or types of development that could come forward on an allocation. So I think it is justified for just those very large scale developments to ask for a health impact assessment, and that would be naturally a more detailed level of assessment than a sustainability appraisal.
Mr. Martin.
Ma'am, I think I understand Mr. Davies' points there, but I guess if it's the case that there could be a scheme over 100 dwellings where there isn't a significant impact, and schemes below 100 dwellings where there could be significant impact, which I'd agree, Mr. Davies, that could be the case, then that just reinforces the point about actually if you screened before, then that would capture it sufficiently. All I've got in mind here is that paragraph 44 of the NPPF is very clear in terms of only requiring what is necessary to determine a planning application. And it's a resource matter for applicants. No doubt for some of our larger members, it's probably less of an issue. I'm thinking out more of the our SME members, smaller house builders, where resources are a lot tighter and having to undertake reports which they might deem that not necessary is a use of resource that they might not necessarily have.
I mean, I suppose that comes down to a matter of how the council's development management team validate things and whether or not it's a, I mean, if it's an SME builder, that it's unlikely that they're going to be putting forward a large scale residential scheme anyway, so they're not going to sort of tick that box of needing one. The main mod for any other development proposals that sort of as required would essentially, as Mr. Davies has set out, go through a screening process anyway at validation. So I think that sort of catches it all. I can understand why you would want a proportionate HIA for a large scale residential development, sort of in any event. So I don't think there needs to be any other changes to this policy to make it sound. Any thoughts from you, Inspector Coyne?
No, I would agree with what you just said. Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks. So in relation to that, then we'd recommend that main mod that you put forward regarding the additional insertion to include other developments that could have a significant health impact. Is it significant adverse health impact, or is it just a significant health impact? Just to make sure you've got the wording consistent with the HIA stuff from Public Health England or from what it says in the framework.
What we've suggested is, and other development proposals which are expected to result in significant health impacts. I don't have the Public Health England guidance in front of me, so that's something that we probably need to check. And yeah, I agree that it makes sense. Mr. Marshall's just looking it up for me.
Thanks, Mr. Martin. Mr. Martin, you've got your
Yeah, I've got the PPG in front of me. It doesn't talk about adverse. It talks about significant impact on the well-being of health and well-being of local population or particular groups within it. I'm imagining it's drafted like that because when I've dealt with HIAs previously, you can obviously have a positive impact as well as a potential adverse one.
Yeah, was as I was saying out loud, I had some sort of like looking inkling in the back of my brain that it's because it includes positive as well, but I feel like I'm like replaying some synapses of doing health impact assessments a long time ago. Okay, that's really helpful. So I think just leave it as it is then in terms of health impacts. There was a representation from Churchill, Living, McCarthy and Stone about this policy not applying to specialist housing proposals for older people. I mean, my view is that it should apply to all because again there could be positive impacts, but I don't know if there was anything specific that you wanted to outline in relation to that representation.
My view is that, specialist housing for older people is an umbrella term that deals with quite a range of different older persons housing types with varying levels of on-site provision in terms of healthcare services. And so, yes, it's possible that certain schemes might have a positive impact on health, but it really depends on the nature of the proposal. And so I think, again, the fact that the policy is asking for a proportionate HIA means that, if there really was a proposal that would be having a positive impact, then that can be set out in the HIA. So my feeling is that the wording should stay as is, and should incorporate specialist housing for older people as well.
Okay, that's yeah, agreed. Thank you. Okay, then question 9 talked about is it sufficiently clear what is meant by large scale development for purposes of HW1 and how will the policy be implemented? We've obviously talked about large scale development and the glossary changes quite a number of times now. Is there anything else you wanted to add in response to that question?
Thank you, ma'am. Just one thing, if I may, which I don't think we've discussed previously, but it's sort of a broader, sort of cross-cutting modification. So we've suggested, I'm just trying to find it. We have suggested somewhere, I think SAMM 128. So SAMM 128, which is in the submitted schedule when it's page 116 to 17. We've suggested that the glossary itself, at the moment, it's a separate document. We've suggested making the glossary part of the actual plan PDF document itself, again, to make it more visible so that people are aware that that definition is there. And I think, again, that will help in terms of the effectiveness of the policy.
Yeah, we would definitely recommend that it becomes part of the plan. I'm presuming, Inspector Coyne, that would be a main mod to pull that into the plan itself or on a separate document. Yeah, it would definitely help because it's just if you've got the glossary in the plan, it's easier than having it 2 separate documents for anybody that's using it. So yeah. Anything else? I know house builders, HBF put in that you thought that there needs to be further clarity on the definition because obviously there's a government intention to introduce medium-sized sites. Was there anything else you wanted to add there, Mr. Martin? I'm presuming not.
Sorry,
no,
I might have not muted. No, there isn't, ma'am. No.
No, it's okay. Sorry, I didn't know whether I'd just not heard you or if you'd answered me. That's fine, thanks. Okay, then moving on to question 10. Is policy HW1 sufficiently clear as how any potential adverse health and wellbeing impacts from residential and other development that is not large scale dealt with? I think given the modification that you suggested, that covers off that question. Is there anything else anybody would like to add in relation to that?
Yeah, no. So the policy as written, I guess, was just trying to impose that requirement in relation to large-scale development proposals. But I agree that in terms of readability, legibility of the plan, just to have that an opening sentence that says that all development proposals should avoid harm to the health and well-being of users of the development and of neighbouring occupiers seems sensible. I've pointed out a range of other policies that all the policies in the plan will work together to deal with those smaller applications as well. Thank you.
Yeah. Anything else from anybody on that question? Yeah, we would recommend that main mod for the opening to HW1 as well. Okay, and then moving on to question 11 regarding the evidence to support GP provision. Obviously, we've got the additional reps from the NHS. Do you want to just outline your response to that? And then I will, because we've obviously the next question relates to secondary healthcare. So perhaps if we just talk about GP contribution here or GP provision, and then we'll talk about secondary healthcare after that on the next question, question 12. So if we can deal with that in that way. So I'll go over to you, Mr. Davies, first in terms of question 11.
Thank you. So if I perhaps respond on GP provision, and then colleagues, Mr. Marshall and Mr. Clockworthy can discuss the second issue of secondary and acute healthcare. So in terms of GP or contributions towards GP provision, I just wanted to highlight it's quite well established in our existing development management practice. And there is an existing methodology which is in place. So that's established jointly by the NHS and Devon County Council working in partnership. It's not part of the evidence base or the examination library, but there's a footnote in our response in the hearing statement which links to that methodology. So yeah, in our view, I think because that methodology is in place, it is well established and there is justification for GP contributions.
Thank you. Will it be?
Sorry, Katie. Just in terms of that methodology, the link in your statement, I don't think it's working. I couldn't access it when I tried to do that. Just double check that, and if that's not accessible, it's just to double check whether that's also in the evidence library, that document that outlines the methodology. It would be helpful maybe to have it as a standalone examination document. Sorry. Thank you.
No, that's helpful. I think you're right, Claire. I think I couldn't access it either. Just thinking about that now, there was something I couldn't access now. Then I couldn't recall which one it was, so it must be this one.
Yeah, I know. I just had a note there. Sorry for interrupting.
Well done for having the note.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. Yeah, we'll record that as an action point, and hopefully we can deal with that over the lunch break.
Okay, I've got a hand up. I'm sorry, that's me. I've just raised my hand now. I didn't mean to do that. I was clicking up to see who would raise their hands. I can't, for some reason, my screen is not letting me see who wants to talk. It's not giving me any names. So fire away, Mr. Dickens.
Thank you, ma'am. Yeah, it gets difficult to know with so many people on the call. It's just to advise that the methodology has recently changed since when local plan was started to be put together. The Devon County Council methodology dates back to almost pre-2020, so it is considerably out of date. So the methodology is now hosted on the ICB website for primary care impact and mitigations. So I can forward that link on to you during the rest of the session so that you've got access to it.
Yeah, that would help, please, to have the document that we appear to not be able to access anyway. It would also help, instead of having it as a link, to actually have it as an examination document as well, just so that it's more helpful for us and any members of the public, and it just stops links sort of being changed, if you will, without us knowing about it.
I'll do that. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. And so just if you can send that to Bob, please, and then he can or the council, and they can put the examination website. Okay, so just in terms of follow-up questions from me then. So the requirement of where necessary, I presume that is just relating to the fact that it needs to be evidenced and compliant with civil regs. Is that what that reference to where necessary means?
We have we are going to shortly suggest a rewording of that sentence.
So we'll just pause that conversation there.
Yeah, I think that'll be good. I mean, yeah, what we're intending to say is, instead of saying where necessary, I don't have the words in front of me, but yeah, effectively where it's proven to be civil compliant.
Yeah. Okay, that's fine. We'll come back to that one. Then my other questions was, will it be applied to purpose-built student accommodation? I know there's some comments and reps about it potentially double counting. The students might be registered, not registered as a local doctor in Exeter. It might be that they're still registered wherever they live up, where their home is essentially. So just will it be applied to PBSA, or is that again proportionality?
Yes. So we have discussed this with the NHS Devon ICB as well. the answer is that yes, it would apply to purpose-built student accommodation as well. I think there's a duty on the NHS to provide care when it's needed. So although students might be registered with a GP at their home address, you know, there could be a range of instances where they might need to seek care where they study as well. So I think, yeah, that would be included. Mr. Dickon himself might be able to explain more, but
yes, please, Mr. Dickon.
Yes, ma'am. There is a considerable number of students, obviously within the Exeter area for the university, and we've got significant demands coming from students who enrol in one of the specialist GP practices that supports the university. And whilst generally, you would expect that their demands on healthcare services would be pretty low, there are quite a few higher ones in the mental health capacity areas and mental health support. So the first point of contact for that is generally the GP practice for a referral. So we would consider that students should be included in looking at any impact from new housing.
Just conscious that they don't live there all the time. So would it would be, I know that the council apply a ratio in terms of new homes for students. Is that something that's part of the methodology, or is it just a sort of a one bed space equals one extra person?
Yeah, exactly. So our methodology would use the average occupancy of the household, but when it's looking at student accommodation, obviously we're basing it on one person per room as the general average as to the potential registrations coming into the area.
And this methodology is used across Devon, then it's not just Exeter, it's used at in other local authorities as well.
Yes, ma'am. I mean, the service that we provide from Torbay and South Devon on behalf of the ICB also extends actually into Somerset and the Hampshire and Isle of Wight areas as well. So the same methodology is used consistently across all three areas.
Thank you. Anything you want to ask on that, Inspector Coyne?
No. Thank you.
Okay. And just asking the question because I've seen it raised in a few reps. Is there anything to do with like dental provision?
Hi, ma'am. At the moment, we don't take anything into account around dental as part of the IPB. I don't think I've seen that anywhere else before.
Thank you. Okay. Anything else on question 11?
Not from me, thank you.
Thank you. So then question 12 is how is access to secondary healthcare being considered, and would any secondary healthcare contributions also be required? So in terms of this, we've had a response from the council that came through on Monday, and then there's been another response that I got this morning from Royal Devon University Healthcare Trust. I don't know if I've said that right. So I've got those two responses. I don't know, do you want to run through where the council's at, Mr. Davies? And I'll hear from the NHS separately after that. Or Mr. Marshall, whoever, somebody from the council.
I might invite Mr. Marshall to respond to that question if that's okay.
Yeah, that's great, thank you.
Thank you. So it's maybe that the position has moved on since the production of the hearing statement.
Yeah.
So we've had some additional discussions with the RDUH Trust subsequently, including earlier this week, and that has enabled the City Council to provide the note which we did so on Monday afternoon, and then the Trust has followed that up. So the way the plan is currently worded, in terms of secondary contributions and in terms of HW1, is that it doesn't make reference to secondary care, and that position was essentially as a result of a number of conversations over a long period of time, but I suppose differences in the potential methodologies which could have been used to demonstrate the development impact on secondary healthcare facilities, and the council having not been persuaded that the methodology would enable contributions to be met in accordance with the SIL regulation, so 122. The discussions have, as I said, have been taken forward over a long period of time, and colleague Mr. Clotworthy, who is on the call, has convened a working group over the last year or so to discuss this. As part of those discussions, the council has now had sight of an emerging methodology, which I think is still in draft form, and we would still have some commentary on that. But that methodology has enabled, I think, is on the way to providing the necessary evidence that contributions could be directly related to development and therefore would meet the test of SIL regulation 122. So on that basis, the position of the council has evolved forwards, and that's set out through the position statement that we submitted on Monday. So that makes various suggested updates or actions which we can take forward to reflect this. The first of those is a suggested revision to the contributions clause within policy HW1, and this came out of a discussion that we had with colleagues on the call from the RDUH NHS Trust on Monday. So essentially, this is on page 1 of our note. Apologies, I don't have the reference number to hand. A colleague might be able to provide that. But essentially, this position would update the contributions element of HW1 so that it moved away from specifying that contributions could be sought just for improved GP provision, and it would instead make reference to health infrastructure being sought where justified by appropriate evidence and where they meet the relevant regulatory and national policy tests. And that text and that phrasing is consistent with some of the emerging discussions that we've been having in relation to policy related to infrastructure provision on a similar point. So that would, if that were to be taken forward, that would clearly be a further main modification which isn't presented in our hearing statement, but was discussed with the Trust on Monday. To reflect that, we would also provide some further explanatory text in advance of that policy to explain the position. That isn't in our position statement because we were putting that together on Monday so that the examination had something to work with. But we have now drafted that, and we can provide that to the examination to colleagues at the trust. We associated with those two changes, so the revision to HW1 and additional supporting text, we would also propose to include a definition of health infrastructure in the glossary. And again, I think the RDUH have provided a helpful suggestion. We would take that forward and we would suggest that we amend that, but that's something that we would be happy to take forward. Beyond this, our note also makes reference to the methodology, and I've also already explained that has been emerging over the last period of time, and we're getting into a place where I think the council is more convinced about that direct link, and we would commit to continue working with the trust on that to ensure that was finalised by the end of 2026. So that's a commitment that the council's making. And then in association with that, we would also, as part of our ongoing infrastructure delivery plan review processes, which will support the new SIL governance arrangements, which we've spoken about in terms of how external bodies may access SIL funding, we would provide updates to that IDP and the health infrastructure projects that are listed in there. So we've essentially summarised that with a series of actions on page 3 of our note, which hopefully provides a helpful summary of the council's position on this matter.
Yeah, that does. Thank you. Can I go over to whoever wants to speak on behalf of the NHS in terms of obviously you sent in a response to the council's statement and just outline where you're at.
Thank you, ma'am. I think if I start and Dave will continue what I haven't said. Thank you very much. It's been really encouraging to have that conversation. Sorry, my camera just left.
It's okay.
I don't know what happened. I'm still here anyway. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, just can't see you.
It suddenly told me that try another device, but I'm not going to try. I'm just going to continue. So that was really helpful conversation. We have still a little bit concerns that the timing of the methodology is going to take quite a long time. There is an appeal decision, as you have been forwarded to from Redditch, which uses the same methodology and which was accepted. It literally looks at the activity rates and direct linked with the development and the impact that it creates. So that's the first concern. And a second concern is just to council's approach to say that infrastructure should be considered in a context of public health, which is really true, partly. But access to health services, and this is my earlier comment, access to health services is really important to kind of diminish the inequality in health in a health system, in patient care and so forth. So those are the kind of things. As to the definition, and I don't know if this helps, because we had such a little time to respond, we have defined the health infrastructure. I was looking at the merging NPPF and actually clarifies, it defines the health infrastructure by healthcare facility, and it's defined in the merging NPPF. And I'm not sure whether that will help. That might be something because it's already defined there. So it might be something that might be just say health facility infrastructure that might just kind of help in the future as well. those are my
it could,
comments.
apart from the fact that it's emerging, so it might not actually end up being in the finalised document. But,
You're absolutely right.
But it's it would be, yeah, as a star stream would be helpful if it could be consistent with whatever the government's defining this as. So yes.
That might be more palatable as well for the council, because I think if we define it too narrowly, I understand that it needs to be slightly broader what we have done. So maybe that will help. I leave that to, and then I leave Dave to kind of comment any further.
Thank you, Lynn Marie. Yes, thank you, Mum. I just wanted to add a couple of things, if that's okay. So it certainly was very useful and very helpful to catch up with the council on Monday lunchtime, and yeah, we're very grateful to get their document Monday afternoon. We were able to sort of consider it in some detail yesterday morning, and our document we sent through last night, and my apologies, I think I ended up sending it to Bob Young this morning, so that's why you've only seen it this morning.
So
what we were trying to do really is to say direction of travel, great, we're in the right direction. We think that we could make suggestions that tighten up the policy in HW1, and that's what's in our document. I think we've made 4 bullet points of areas that we think could reduce some possible ambiguities, really. So that's what we would like to do, is to make some suggestions in those 4 bullets at the beginning of our document for how we could make that clearer. And then, yes, sorry, I do want to reiterate Lena Marie's point about, we have spent quite a long time talking to the council, which is, is what it is. We spent quite a long time last summer talking methodology. I do think it wouldn't be right to suggest that we spend the whole of this year then continuing to talk methodology. I really don't see why we can't sort this quite quickly. And I would really like to suggest that if we can finalise that methodology within a month, which is a much shorter time period than has been suggested by the council, then this enables us to move forward, because it means that we are in place with a policy adoption, rather than having something where the plan is adopted and then we're having to deal with something later. So yeah, trying to just make sure we get this so that it can be adopted within the policy is important. The last comment perhaps I can just make is that in our document we submitted, we do have some concerns in the way that the IDP refers to our infrastructure as strategic, in the sense that it might be interpreted as not operationally important. And a lot of our infrastructure needs are absolutely operationally important. They're about making sure we have the capacity to deal with patients in the here and now, not necessarily something that could be deemed to be a long-term project. I think the word strategic in our conversation with the council may imply that they're assets which are used by areas other than just Exeter. And that's true, but the most proportion of our patients do come from Exeter. So just because there's a greater reach across other local planning authorities may be the reason why things have been deemed strategic. But we just wanted to suggest amendments therefore to the IDP to make that clearer as well. So perhaps I can stop there, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Martin, you've got your hand up, but I'm conscious that the council have got their hand up in presumably in response to what the NHS have just said. So can I pause coming to you, Mr. Martin, first, and go straight to the council in response?
That's fine.
Yeah, so Mr. Clotworthy.
Thank you. Just briefly, addressing the point about the timescale for agreeing a methodology with the NHS, which both parties who've spoken have mentioned. We are absolutely committed to working quickly with them now. Really appreciate the working relationship that we've developed, and we want to continue with that. Mr. Marshall mentioned end of the year, and the RDUH we mentioned within a month. I think within a month we felt we might be over promising, so we didn't want to risk saying that such a short timescale, but I would like to think we would get it done well before the end of the year, and we can get on with that now.
Okay. I mean, it'd be great for us, for our side, if you can get it done by, maybe September. Gives you meet in the middle.
Yes.
Would be helpful, please. Okay, Mr. Martin, I'll come back to you.
Thank you, ma'am. There's a few worrying points for us at the HBF. No doubt that the work that's been done between the NHS and the council has all been done in good intentions. The key for us is the fact that at the moment that health infrastructure hasn't been defined, and our worry here is that secondary healthcare can cover all sorts of things, and I'm presuming we're talking here about physical sort of infrastructure rather than day-to-day revenue, staffing, treatment, that sort of thing, which I think it's the Harbour case from a few years ago sort of established that that's not really an appropriate use of sort of Section 106 monies. It needs to be that physical infrastructure. So we would really seek assurances that definition is completely sort of nailed down in that respect. The other point I really wanted to raise with more as well is if secondary healthcare is being brought in as a potential contribution, how is that being reflected in the viability assessment, which I presume when it was making its assumptions for Section 106 costs was doing so on the basis of primary healthcare rather than primary and secondary. And I think lastly, the point that I wanted to make was if there is further work being done between sort of the NHS and the council in terms of methodology and definitions, etc., when are other parties going to be able to sort of comment and interrogate those sort of matters in more detail? It's just, I guess, a fairness point. Thank you.
Okay.
Can I make a brief point, Mum? Is that okay? Sorry, I think I've got my hand up next. I just, what I should have added actually is that I wanted to put on record that the LPA support we have from Marco and his team has highlighted that a neighbouring LPA, which is in Teignbridge, has adopted pretty much the methodology that we're now talking about that we'll work on with the council. So, you know, I'm hoping that will also provide us this impetus to get this done quite quickly, given that it's working within Teignbridge. Now, the way this works is that most patients in the Teignbridge area go to Torbay Hospital, but some patients, because Teignbridge area buffs up to Exeter, actually come to the Exeter Hospital that I represent. So, you know, that's working in practice using this methodology in our neighbouring LPA. I won't comment on the previous speakers' comments because I think maybe it's more appropriate for the council to come back on first, possibly. Thank you, Mum.
Yes, please. Thank you. Mr. Leader, you've got your hand up.
Well, only very tentatively, because what I was wondering, and this is perhaps one for Mr. Clotworthy, is whether we are contemplating the methodology would be in any way embedded in the local plan. I was under the impression that it wouldn't be, and that would be for the, I think, simple reason that it may have to evolve a bit, because of course these methodologies are fine until they're stress tested by an applicant, and it may be that what we think is wonderful might have to turn out to be a bit more flexible in due course. So I don't know what Mr. Clotworthy will say to that. It may be that he'd say, no, we need to embed it. No, I'm not trying to express any opinions at all. I'm just opening the point up for discussion, if I may.
Thanks, Mr. Lee. That is helpful. It was something that I was wondering myself. Mr. Clotworthy.
Yeah, sorry. So to be clear, it was never our intention that it would actually be embedded in the local plan. It would be a supporting, working along document that would work alongside the local plan, which is why we need to make sure that we get the policy and supporting wording right so that we can build on that.
Okay, so it's not really anything to do with Inspector Coyne and I then, as to whether or not the methodology is agreed or not, because it's not part of the plan. Okay, just the question running back to what Mr. Martin raised about viability and whether or not it's been part of those viability assessments. If the council got any comments on that?
I can come in on that, Ma'am. So the secondary contributions haven't been included in the viability assessment, but the way in which the viability assessment for the local plan was undertaken set out a range of contributions from a series of case study developments within the city, and used those as the inputs for the Section 106 costs. So the justification of that is that there will always be a package of contributions, but rarely will every potential contribution be sought. So it hasn't been tested directly, but packages of contributions which are standard within Exeter have been, and the assessments, particularly in the viability addendum report, showed that there was some headroom within the viability appraisals for the strategic sites, for example. So that was the viability point. I think the HBF made reference to a lack of definition of secondary care. That's something that we would need to tighten up through the definition, which is something that we've suggested. We haven't submitted a potential definition to the examination yet, but that would come forward through that, and it clearly would also be linked in with the methodology. The point about infrastructure is a good one. So our suggested text to be inserted into HW1 makes specific reference to infrastructure. So we're most concerned about the capital investments that might be required to support development. So infrastructure will be covered were our suggested revised text be taken forward. And then just in terms of the methodology and how that might be made available, I think we would have to work with the trust on that. As Mr. Clotworthy has already said, it won't be in the plan, but it would presumably be publicly available either on the NHS website or perhaps our own. I'm not aware of how, for example, Teambridge have published the equivalent methodology relating to their plan and relating to their ongoing development management process. But it's clearly something that we would that either the RDUH or the City Council would publish at an appropriate time.
Thank you, Mr. Martin.
Thank you, ma'am. If it's the case that secondary contributions haven't been included in the viability assessment, but I know Mr. Marshall's talked about it being based on case studies. I presume those case studies, however, have not had to have secondary contributions included within them. So I don't know whether those case studies will give a true representation of what the actual Section 106 costs are. And I understand the point Mr. Marshall was making about headroom, but we don't know to what degree any secondary health contributions may swallow up that headroom or may well actually exceed it. There just seems to be a bit of a gap in the evidence there if it is now, at this stage going to include secondary health contributions. I think the other point as well Mr. Marshall made about it very much that the definition is linked to the methodology, and I think that just underlines again that there needs to be some sort of involvement from the development industry when looking at that methodology, at least an opportunity for us to comment on it. Otherwise it's a transparency and fairness issue from our point of view. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Leader, you've got your hand. Well, Mr. Dickin, you've got your hand up first. I'll come to you, Mr. Dickin.
Thank you very much, ma'am. It was just to offer to Mr. Marshall that the statement of common ground that was covered for the Teambridge local plan covered quite a lot about how the approach was taken to both primary and secondary care and the potential values that were included in the viability. So I was just offering that if it was any use to Exeter, and if it's for use yourselves, I can pass that on to Mr. Young as well.
That could potentially be helpful, given that it's methodology for both. Mr. Coyne agreed. Inspector Coyne agreed.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. That would be helpful, just to see how it's been dealt with elsewhere, and would assist us in assessing things.
I'll forward that on. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Leader.
Well, I don't want to prolong this, but in terms of secondary care, the National Institute of Clinical Excellence has a really nice, concise definition, actually, of what secondary care is. I mean, it's 2 sentences. Secondary care is healthcare provided in hospitals. That's the first sentence. Second is it includes accidents and emergency departments, outpatients departments, antenatal services, genitourinary medicine, sexual health clinics. I mean, I know it's a bit more than that, but I mean, that's it really. And the PPG in paragraph 1 of ID 53 doesn't worry too much about trying to define it in detail. So perhaps we don't need to worry about it. But the second thing is, I think one of the reasons we discussed, and George will put me right on this, for not trying to nail down the numbers when it comes to secondary or any other kind of care, is that unlike a lot of the infrastructure we're going to be putting into this plan, it's not easy to specify at this stage. And given the plan runs to 2042, it's probably one of those things that you can't sensibly build into a whole plan viability study at this stage. It's going to be too fluid. So I don't know whether that's helpful, but whether it is or not, I'll be quiet now.
No, that is helpful. Mr. Marshall.
Thank you, Mum. Just one additional point to make is that although the council position currently has been that we're not currently seeking secondary healthcare contributions, they have been secured in the past before there was such significant understanding and discussion about the methodology. So there are examples of developments which have been viable and have come forward in the context of securing secondary healthcare contributions. It won't be in the last couple of years, but in the past they have been secured, and so that does provide a point about viability.
Yeah, that's helpful. I recall you saying that in earlier sessions that there's been instances where secondary healthcare has been sought. I presume it's not formed part of the examples that were fed into the local plan viability assessment, though.
I would need to check and confirm that, Mum.
If you could, that would be helpful, please. Over to you, Mr. All I can see is TA. Mr. Tarbutt, sorry.
Thank you, Mum. So yes, just briefly, I wanted to just clarify one thing. I think the problem with picking a definition like the NICE definition that Mr. Leader referred to is that the definition we put forward, I think is a. Sorry, there's a bit of background noise here. There we go. Sorry, somebody needs to go on to mute. That's it. The definition we put forward is relatively broad, and the reason we've done that is because the problem with the NICE definition is it's pretty much out of date. And the reason it's out of date is because it focuses on hospital-based services, and one of the things that the Department of Health and the government are pushing very hard at the moment is out of hospital services, which actually NHS trusts still provide those community services, if you like. So infrastructure that we seek contributions to may not necessarily be bricks and mortar. They may well be infrastructure such as digital health technologies that are capital based and require investment. So I think that's that broad definition around community-based services is as important as thinking hospital-based services, which is why we try to provide that definition in the document. Thank you, Mum.
Thank you, Mr. Martin.
I don't really want to labour the point, but that definition is absolutely crucial because, as I've said before, there is established case law about what can be asked for in terms of secondary health contributions. And I know Mr. Tarbutt's mentioned about services. Well, it's not services, it's the physical infrastructure. It is really things like the bricks and mortar, not paying for additional doctors or additional sort of medications and things like that. So it further underlines again the need for that definition to be absolutely sort of precise in what it actually is.
Thank you. Over to you, Mr. Alta. Is it Alta Collier? Is that how I said that right?
Yes, sorry about it. I have great deal of difficulties with the IT I'm trying to get a new device, so I hope you can hear me.
I can hear you. Yes, I can hear you.
I have this echo going on behind. I don't understand. I'm just that. I hope not getting rid of that one. Okay,
we can hear you. Can you still hear us and hear what's going on?
Yes, I can. So just to let you know, there are examples around the country where the similar methodology has been used and accepted. We just provided you one appeal. So it is defined as well as infrastructure facility rather than a service. So just to kind of make you at ease of that element.
Thank you. Mr. Talbot.
Oh, thank you, Mum. I thought it might be helpful to reassure Mr. Martin that just to clarify what I said previously, I wasn't talking about contributions towards services. So this isn't paying for nurses, for example, or revenue, what you might call revenue funding. When I refer to community services, I was simply pointing out that they don't have to take place in a hospital. They could take place in a community, and in a community, the infrastructure that's required will be capital related infrastructure, but it might well be, for example, a digital system, not necessarily bricks and mortar. So it is not the pay for the nurses, it's the infrastructure necessary to then deliver the services that is the point I was trying to make. Thank you, Mum.
Okay, thank you. So in terms of where I'm at, or where we're at for what we need, we basically need you guys to probably get your heads together again in terms of in terms of exactly what the main modification is going to look like, because I know the NHS have suggested a slight alteration to that, which is NHS healthcare infrastructure rather than the council's health infrastructure. So I've not really got a sort of sweeping opinion as to which one's necessary. Mr. Inspector Coyne, have you got any thoughts as to which one would be more sound?
No, I don't know. I suppose again, if the parties can get together and come up with some sort of agreed wording, I think that's the key thing for us. I'm getting back to Mr. Martin's point about the methodology. If that's not in the plan, I don't think it's within our gift to give an opportunity to comment on it. But the reference in the plan has to refer to the most up-to-date version of that methodology, if that makes sense. So it's just making sure we've got that clear in the plan, and then we can have a look at things in the round anyway, including the viability aspect.
And then obviously there's the agreed supporting text to go in. I know the NHS suggested something, but the council needs some working. So it might be that, I don't know, we give you, I'll say a 2-week deadline to try and get back to us with an agreed statement of common ground in relation to this and the modifications that you're suggesting. Would that be helpful?
I think we could work to that, Mum. We've had some really positive discussions over the last week, and particularly earlier this week. So I think we've got a firm basis to keep moving forwards, and I'm sure we can get something agreed in the next 2 weeks. Just sort of looking at calendars a little bit. So that would be something around maybe the Friday the 5th of June, perhaps, for submission of a further statement of common ground.
Yeah, that would be fine. And if we just do close the play on the 5th of June, that would be helpful, please. And can the council also include, I mean, it doesn't perhaps need to be in the statement of common ground itself, but that commentary about the viability in relation to secondary healthcare contributions, please.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, thank you. So anything else to add on this matter? Okay, thank you. So then moving on to question 13, which regarded criteria E of HW1 being necessary. I've nothing further to ask on that question, or add indeed. I've got the council's answer. Was there anything the council wanted to add to that?
No, I think what we've said in our hearing statement adequately captures our response to that question.
Thanks, Mr. Davis. Then the next question is question 14 about whether the requirements of policies HW1 and HW2 are consistent with national planning policy based on robust and up-to-date evidence. I don't have anything to add. I don't know if anybody else does in relation to that question. Mr. Barton.
It was just a very quick point. The IDP outlines where there are contributions required for health. Some of them, from what I can see in the latest version, don't have figures attached to them, and I don't know whether that's subsequently been updated, but it would be helpful if there was sort of those figures to get an idea as to how much those bits of infrastructure are to get a complete picture.
I'll pass over to the council to respond to that, please, in regards to the IDP.
Yeah, so the IDP is we would describe it as a living document. It's a document that will be continued, after examination and after the adoption of the Exeter Plan. It will continue to be reviewed and kept up to date. It's sort of naturally, the submission, the IDP that we've submitted is a snapshot in time and has the best and most up-to-date information available at the point of submission. I would also point out that there's a column in the IDP on potential funding sources. Not all infrastructure projects included in the IDP are ones that developers would be expected to pay for. So I think where we have a figure, we've put it in. There are some figures that say TBC, and I think that is just reflects the most up-to-date information that we have. And as soon as we have better information, we'll put that into the IDP as we keep it up to date, sort of year by year.
Thank you. We've talked about the IDP previously about being a living document, and I think we're on the fourth or fifth iteration of it now that we've got in the plan examination library. So it clearly is something that changes over time. So that's helpful to know. Okay. Question 15 was about whether or not the policies were sound. I've heard quite a lot on these policies already. I don't have any other questions on that. Anybody else want to add anything to question 15? That's great. So then just moving on then to the main mods. There are a couple I think that we might have missed. So we definitely haven't talked about the main mod HW2, which was the insertion of no, which is quite necessary. Was there any others that we've not talked about or that we need to talk about?
Yes, please. Do you mind if I just run through them sort of chronologically? There might be some
Absolutely.
repetition,
That's
but
helpful.
I think
No,
just
that's fine.
to make sure. So we've discussed the insertion of a new opening sentence to policy HW1, saying that all development proposals should avoid harm to health and well-being. We've suggested a new, we definitely covered this one, a new suggested main modification that for health impact assessment applications for large-scale residential development proposals and other development proposals which are expected to result in significant health impacts.
Yeah.
There is, what we haven't discussed and isn't in our schedule that we've submitted, is a corresponding change to the supporting text, which makes the exact same suggestion to the wording in paragraph 14.8 of the supporting text.
Yeah, that would be definitely. Well, I don't think that's probably not going to be a main mod, that, because it's just clarifying the supporting text. Any thoughts from you, Inspector Coyne?
It was just a point of clarification. it's fine. If it's not affecting the implementation of the policy or how it's going to be used, then it should be fine as an additional modification.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. We've discussed policy HW1 about contributions, the change from GP provision to health infrastructure. And I know that the RDUH Trust have a different view on that. But that, yeah, so we have, I think that one we're going to put a pin in, I guess.
Yeah, pin it until, yeah, that's 2 weeks. Hopefully we'll have an agreed main mod then there with NHS as well.
Okay.
I got
and relating.
Just 1 second. There is a hand up from Mrs. Antar Collier.
Yeah. I was only commenting on the supporting text that sorry, I lost the document now. That wait a second. Here we go. In the supporting suggested by the council in relation to public health being the only health impact that the council considers, that I think needs to be modified.
So what paragraph number is that, please?
That's a suggested new one that was sent last night. .3, I think it's 3.3. The council suggested that the purpose of the health impact is mainly public health. That might cause some confusion.
Is this in the council's position statement?
No, it's the one that was sent last night or yesterday.
Sorry, I'm just struggling to understand where you want the amendment. So is it an amendment to the supporting text?
Yeah,
but it's coming from. So where in the supporting text is it in the plan?
I think it's 3.3. Just I lost the document now because I have to change my computer. So bear with me. You can continue the discussion. I'll come back to you so I don't waste any time. Yeah.
Well, I think if I may sort of summarize, I think the City Council has some suggested text around supporting text in relation to that. And I think the RDUH Trust also has some suggested supporting text. And there are some differences. So I think that that's one that would also need to be picked up through the forthcoming statement of common ground. And similarly, there'd be a change to the definition, well, an insertion of a definition of health infrastructure, which I think is also one for the statement of common ground.
Yes, please.
Then there is still on policy HW1, lower down in the policy text, it refers to development proposals for new healthcare facilities will be supported where they are easily accessible. We've suggested making that, so inserting particularly, so development proposals for new healthcare facilities will be supported, particularly where they are easily accessible by public transport, which again just sort of widens that support. So, but given the need for new healthcare facilities, I think in all instances the council would be looking to support that, but with a nudge towards trying to make sure those are in accessible locations.
Yeah.
And that's SMM 79.
Yeah, we'd recommend that. I think yeah, like you say, it's more positive, encourages places that are accessible.
Okay, thank you. A new suggested additional modification, which, forgive me, isn't in the hearing statement, but I spotted on the train on the way in. I note in paragraph 14.7 of the supporting text, it refers to the Healthy Homes Bill. So it says, on a national level, the Town and Country Planning Association has launched a campaign that seeks to improve the quality of new houses coming forward in England called Healthy Homes. Refers to the principles, and then it says a Healthy Homes Bill has been prepared, which, if passed into law, would place additional responsibilities on local planning authorities to have regard to the Healthy Homes principles. My understanding is that bill isn't being progressed any further. So I would suggest as an additional modification, a change to paragraph 14.7 to delete that sentence that I've read. So just deleting the reference to the Healthy Homes Bill, but keeping in the text in around the Healthy Homes principles, which do still exist.
Yeah, that would be helpful. I mean, is even the second sentence required then in the interim we've sought to address this need for healthy homes in the policies proposed? I mean, is that the second sentence necessary as well?
Well, I would suggest deleting in the interim and just starting a new sentence with we have sought to address the need.
Yeah, that's fine then. Yeah.
And forgive me, is that so would that be an additional modification or a main in your view?
I'm going to pass on to Inspector Coyne. I'd say additional. I'm going to go additional.
I think it's an additional because it's just removing something that's sort of irrelevant and not needed anymore. So yeah, that's fine. It's an additional.
Okay, thank you. Yes, then a well-spotted modification on policy HW2, which inserts the word no, so requiring that the policy makes that there's no unacceptable impacts. Good spot, Miss Day. So that's SMM 80 of the submitted schedule.
And that is obviously recommended from us.
Thank you. Then again in the submitted schedule, so this relates to also policy HW2 SMM 81, revising the word of the second criterion A at the end of the policy HW2. So it says development proposals on land affected by contamination or pollution or in areas affected by poor standards of amenity will only be permitted where the land is or can be made suitable for the proposed use. The suggested modification is to delete the words the proposed, so the land is or can be made suitable for use in general terms, and that's to pick up on it's agreed through the statement of common ground with the Environment Agency and uses established terminology from their guidance.
Yeah, it's clearer, much clearer. So
okay,
yeah, that will be recommended.
Okay. And then, yeah, just general. So we've already discussed. Okay, so on the definition of large-scale residential developments, this is SAMM 128. To make it very clear that the definition includes mixed-use developments, the suggestion is to say developments which include 100 or more homes, 200 plus student or co-living bed spaces, etc. So that would be a change to the definition in the glossary.
Yeah, so that's SAM 132. Yeah.
I've got 1, 2. Okay, no, I think you're right. I think I've made a mistake there. 132.
It's all right. It was just the overall glossary reference to make it a part of the local plan is 128. So yeah, 132 is about including 100 or more homes or 200 student co-living bed spaces.
Okay. Great. And then yeah, we've discussed making the glossary part of the plan itself. Yeah. There's also a further additional modification. So again, a change to more sort of the layout of the glossary definitions. So the City Council would like to suggest a further additional minor modification to the Exeter Plan glossary. The modification will involve combining the glossary's currently separate definitions of large-scale residential development and large-scale commercial development into one overall definition of large-scale development. So it's more just a change to sort of readability of the glossary definitions.
Yeah, that's helpful and clearer.
Thank you. I think that is all the suggested modifications for that chapter.
Okay, super. Thank you. Anybody else wants to add on the health and wellbeing chapter? Okay, super. So we're going to do monitoring and implementation tomorrow. Because I know that Rachel Damon from HBF can be there for that session. So we've just moved that into tomorrow, and then we're doing a mop-up sort of session just to outline next steps. Inspector Coyne's issued an agenda for that, or we have issued an agenda, Inspector Coyne Rosa, for tomorrow. Does anybody have any comments or questions on that? Mr. Marshall, you've got your hand up.
Thank you, Mum. This might be another AOB, so I might come back to my point unless anyone else has got something to add.
Anything else to add on? Nope. Okay, over to you, Mr. Marshall.
Thank you, Mum. Just one point to come back on. There was a discussion at one of the hearings last week about open space and the council evidence relating to the umbrella term of open space. We're doing some work internally just to provide a very brief, and this will be sort of 1 or 2 pages guide, sort of position note to explain the evidence which the council has relating to the various types of open space, particularly that which is under the management of the council. So if that's okay with the inspectors, we'd like to submit that as an additional examination document in due course.
Okay, when will that be ready?
I think we would be looking to complete that in the next week.
Any thoughts from you, Inspector Coyne?
No, I think that's fine. Yeah, we do need some clarification on that, so that would be helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, it would be helpful. Could you, so in the next week, do we need to set a deadline, or are you going to set your own deadline?
How about Friday of next week? That would work from our perspective, if I may.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine with us.
29th, yeah.
It's half term next week for me. I'm just checking that that's okay with you guys in terms of leave, anything that you've got coming up.
I think that's manageable.
Okay.
Yeah. Super then. So next Friday for that briefing note, please, or position statement.
Mr. Marshall, if there are any issues, because it's half term for me as well next week, if there are any issues in terms of people being off on leave, then it could be a similar deadline to the other walk, the 5th of June, if needed.
Okay. If that is acceptable to you, that would be absolutely fine by us as well.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, just to give you that little bit of extra headroom, as it were, because yeah, it can be difficult to get these things done with other commitments. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so I don't think there's anything else that we need to talk about today, unless anybody wants to raise anything.
No, thank you, Mum.
No, the resounding silence is a no for me. Okay, so I'm just scrambling now to work out what time we were due to meet tomorrow. Is it 11:30 or 11?
I think it's 11.
It's 11.
It's 11.
Okay, so we will resume tomorrow morning at 11 o'clock virtually again. Is the council going to try and stream it again tomorrow, or are we going to do this, what we've done today?
I think we're going to try again with the same approach that we started, but we have our IT department working away in the background.
That's great. So ideally revert to what we were doing today as in streaming it. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, we're going to try and stream tomorrow's session. Yeah.
Okay. Right, that's helpful. So if we start off tomorrow, can someone from the council be checking that the stream's working and just update us sort of as soon as possible if it's not, rather than relying on somebody emailing Bob, because obviously we weren't aware of that today. I know that the technology clearly worked yesterday, but it's not worked today, has it? So if we can just make sure that it is working tomorrow, that will be helpful, and then we can sort of crack on at 11 and hopefully get done with what we need to on those matters for tomorrow.
Yeah, we'll make sure it's tested earlier tomorrow morning.
Super. Okay, thank you. Right, we'll adjourn then, and we'll come back at 11 o'clock tomorrow morning with everybody that needs to be involved. Thank you very much for your participation today, and we'll see you tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.